Welcome back to another Rusty Mo podcast. And this is something new that we've been talking about, Matt and I have been discussing. And it's a long form podcast. And what does that mean? It's going to be me solo talking about an individual subject, going a little bit deeper. So we'll continue doing our normal podcast, Matt and I together, or we'll have guests. But there's a lot of content that I believe that you've been asking about. And so I thought, let's just dive into these specific topics. So again, share just like everybody else. I ran into a couple of people I hadn't seen in a long time up in Northern Michigan. And we shared our podcast with a lot of people like, wow, I didn't even know you had this Rest, Eat, Move podcast. So share this. But again, we're going to go into specific details. And today's podcast is all about testosterone. So for both men and women, we're going to dive in. So if you want to take some notes, I'm going to go through this, but I'm going to give you a couple questions at the very beginning. So if I asked you, what is testosterone? Most people are familiar with that. It's a male hormone people think of, but I call it the vitality test. So if you haven't done the Know Your Numbers, this is on our website under the downloads. It's called Know Your Numbers. And one of the tests at the bottom is testosterone, total testosterone. And why do I call it the vitality test? Because it really gives you a look into the future of how you're thriving, how you're aging, what your capacity is. So I just had my blood test just recently, about a month ago. And it's the first thing I look at every time. But if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. And I think everybody wants to know how they're aging. Again, back to the vitality test. And the other thing too, when you see testosterone for both men and women, I can tell whether you're thriving or just surviving. So it really gives you a detailed look into how you're performing, how you're aging, how you're feeling. And there's so much garbage out there. I was thinking about this last night. Doug Flutie and Frank Thomas are talking about total T and all these things on, you're going to see it more during the football season. Not trying to beat anybody up. Android, ageless male, you got patches, pills, the list goes on and on. Even HR, hormone replacement therapy. We'll talk about that. I'll talk about that at the very end today. But there's a lot of noise out there. So let's step back today and let's learn a little bit more about that. Now, let's begin with some symptoms. Like, what are some symptoms with people that are not really thriving? And I'm just going to share with you. And you see this every day on TV, on radio, on social, is low sex drive, erectile dysfunction for men. Wake up, guys. If you're having erectile dysfunction, probably something's not right with your testosterone. Mental health, depression, increased belly fat. We know our testosterone is not great if we have increased belly fat, or drop in lean muscle, fatigue, hair loss, poor sleep. These are all symptoms of my hormones being out of balance. So we got to step back and say, do we really believe a gel, a pill, a patch, even heart rate or hormone replacement therapy is the answer? It could be, but that's not where I want to begin today. Here's another question for you. Why does your testosterone level drop? Okay, make that question. Why is it dropping? If you get it checked, could it be linked to your lifestyle? Could it be linked to your lifestyle? So I get these emails every day, especially from men. Should I be on hormone replacement therapy? I start asking some of these questions. And instantly, the person I'm talking to, they realize they're not doing any of the upfront work. They just want to jump right to, and the doctors, again, in their behalf, are not going to have the time or maybe the expertise to help you improve that. So again, back to stress, poor sleep, little space, pace of your life, lack of movement, poor nutrition, all these things. We dive into how we doing with this. not doing great. So is it possible to improve your testosterone level without taking stuff? And the answer is absolutely. So that's the setup right there. Again, get your know your numbers handout, take it to your doctor. You want to get this test. Okay, so now we're going to dive into a little bit more. So, what is testosterone? Testosterone is a hormone. What is a hormone? A hormone is a chemical messenger. Think about that. And when you think about testosterone, you have two pathways. So make this really simple today. The big kahuna at the top of the pathway is called cholesterol. This is my next long-form podcast we're going to talk about is cholesterol. We've talked about this before, but I'm going to go into the weeds a little bit more. So at the top of the hormonal pathway is cholesterol. Cholesterol makes stress hormones, and cholesterol makes these things called steroidal or sex hormones, which we're all familiar with. So let's just start with that. So cholesterol makes stress hormones. What would those be? That would be cortisol. That would be aldosterone that controls fluids, the kidneys. That would be called adrenaline. So when you see the bear, thank goodness the body has this stress side that instantly reacts. That's the fight or flight. The other side is when the body's in repairing. So we'll go there in just a second, but I want to make this point very crystal clear at the beginning. If your stress side is on, that's called cortisol steal. Hang with me just for a second here. Cortisol steal means that if the cortisol levels are on, they're going to steal from your building or your sex hormones. So even if you take hormone replacement therapy and your stress hormones are on, very difficult to get those hormones where you want them to be. All right, so that sets up the pathway to understand how it works. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into your steroidal or sex hormones. The top of the chain, as I mentioned, is cholesterol. Then it goes into this thing called DHEA. And from DHEA, we go into growth hormone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. Again, we're not going to go on to the super deep in this, but just understand that's where this bucket lives. And today we're going to pretty much talk about total testosterone. We have free testosterone. That's what's available. But really, we're going to talk about total testosterone because it's an easy test to get. All right, so now we understand that. So what does testosterone do? I always ask, what does it do inside the body? It helps. It's like the master conductor. It helps with growth and repair. So I need that. Yeah, that's why when we're younger, we have higher levels of testosterone for both men and women. We're in that basically building the life. And as we age, generally testosterone starts to slowly go down. Energy, mood, sex drive, sperm production, fellas, weight control, increased muscle, increased bone, skin, hair, and nails. As we age and our testosterone level drops, what happens? We lose muscle, bone, skin's changing, energy's not great, erectile dysfunction for many men, mental health, weight gain, and decrease in sex drive. So we have to understand that having a healthy, imbalanced, thriving testosterone makes us feel amazing. So that's why when I get my blood test, I'm always looking first for that vitality marker, and that is my total testosterone. All right. So that kind of gives you a little bit. So what is a baseline? Give me some baselines here. All right. So the range is so large. Let's make this really crystal clear. If I was changing these ranges, I would bring them so tight. But we look like anything else in our world. We have these huge ranges. And this is where we get in trouble. The range for total testosterone for men is 250 to 1,000. What? 250 to 1,000. I cannot tell you how many young men in their 30s and 40s send me an email and say, hey, my testosterone level is 320. How is that? I go, oh, wait a minute. Your testosterone level at 30 to 40 should probably be 800 plus. I know instantly there's too much stress, their lifestyle's not healthy, the list goes on. So for men, that number needs to be, this is what I truly believe, 500 is your minimum. I don't care if you're 70 years old, it should be the minimum. So years ago, when I'm in my mid 50s, my testosterone level always is hovering around 800, 900, right in there. I'm always talking crap that, my testosterone level's high. But I get my testosterone level back and it's hovering right around 620. And I sit down with my son, Matt. I said, Dad, I said to him, he goes, what's up? And I said, I just got my blood test back. And my testosterone level dropped a couple hundred points. I said, I don't understand it. I'm doing my superfoods, doing my omega-3 fats. I'm doing the strength training, doing all that. And Matt hit me right in the forehead. And he says, Dad, you're working too much. You're traveling all the time. You're just gone 21 days on the road. You're gone 18 days on the road. He was right. I'm in a different hotel and I'm in a different bed. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm going. My pace and my space are not good. And then it hit me like, okay, I'm doing all these other things that I think are good. I need to change myself. So I instantly came back to the team and said, okay, if I'm gone on the road for 4 days, I need to come back for 3. And that was the plan for many years. A year and a half later, my testosterone level went up 200 points. Why am I sharing this with you? Because I don't care where you are in your world, you can always improve it. So if it's 320, that's saying you're going to jump up to 800, but you can definitely get it to 400, 450, 500. So the baseline, I truly believe for most men is 500 plus. So you want to have that number, and every year, just like you're looking at it, what can I do differently? Am I getting enough sleep? We'll get into the details in just a second, but that's the range, 250 to 1,000. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not normal. So for the men over 500, for women, that number should be between 15 and basically 70. But 15 is not good. It's like 250. What's good for women is over 30. So men, 500, for women over 30. So about 15 years ago, I get a call from one of my clients, and they have a friend that's an elite triathlete that lives out in the Midwest, out in the St. Louis area. And so she comes and spends about a week with me. And the first thing I wanted to get from her before she came, I want you to get your blood test. And we'll get your total testosterone. She was, I think, 31 at the time, has young kids at home, but a really high quality, high performing triathlete. So she got a little pushback about getting her testosterone as a woman. And I said, I don't care what pushback, get it. And again, we can get these, there's lots of ways to get these tests now, but ideally from your primary care doctor. She gets it, and I get it back before she comes. She's at 9. And I said for women, it's 15 to basically 70. Ideally, thriving is 30 plus, like men, 500 plus. So as soon as I got that number, I knew she wasn't getting enough rest. So we met. It's not about training harder, faster, all this stuff. It's about planning more recovery into her training, getting more sleep, work on her breath, spacing her workouts, more restorative. Today we have heart rate variability, but back then we weren't using that. So as we got plugged in more rest and rejuvenation, and she would send me her training, she said, do I really need to rest today? Yeah, we're going to do some active rest, some simple stretching, just walking. We need to recover. And after about 6 months, her times got better. She felt better. She felt more energized. And then a year later, her testosterone level was over 20. She went from 9 to over 20. She knew she was on the correct path and getting more recovery. So no matter where you are, just to give you an idea, those are the numbers you're looking at. Men 500 plus, women 30 plus. And this is total testosterone. And when you think about what causes low testosterone, I'm just going to give you a couple here. So the first thing I want you to understand in total testosterone, and I wrote this in my book, this is on page 322 in my Rest, Eat, Move book. But when you think about this right now in a 1 to 10 scale, so again, if you're rating yourself, so I'm going to read this right from my book. How would you rate your stress? 1 to 10 scale. So remember, if I feel like I'm on all the time, my pace and my space in my life is not good, I feel like I'm moving in that high level of stress, Here comes cortisol steal. You're not going to have good hormones. You're not going to have good testosterone. Are you getting a good night of sleep? Yes or no? Number 3, remember, cholesterol is a raw material that makes testosterone. We haven't even talked about this yet. Are you taking a statin medication to lower testosterone? And if you are, and we're not going to get into it, we're going to get into that more in our next podcast, but statin medications generally will affect your total testosterone in a negative way. Because again, it affects cholesterol. Cholesterol is the raw material that makes DHEA, which leads into growth hormone, testosterone, progesterone, and all that. Are you drinking too much alcohol? This is a killer. This is a killer for your total testosterone. We're not saying you can't have alcoholic beverages, but pick and choose. But if you're consuming too many alcoholic beverages, it's almost impossible to have high levels or a high level of total testosterone. Is your diet too acidic? Too much protein powders? We talked about this last time. Energy drinks, processed foods, stress, all makes the body more acidic. If you are acidic, your body's going to thrive because in your gut, back to the gut, is when your body is making all these wonderful things. Are you deficient in omega-3 fatty acids? That's the cod liver oil, that's the flax, chia, walnuts. That's the raw material to making your testosterone. And last but not least, what does your strength training program look like? Strength training really is the fountain of youth. You've heard me talk about this many times, but I'm a huge fan of really looking at your strength training workout of, am I working doing this? I do a 3-day split routine. I'm a huge fan. This is what stimulates testosterone for the body to grow and repair. So again, that's some of the questions that causes an imbalance of your testosterone. All right, so now we're turning the page here. This is the last piece. We're going to talk about how do you improve your total testosterone. So just to let everybody know that I've had clients over the years that have improved their testosterone 100, 150, 200 points in a year to year and a half by doing no hormone replacement therapy. It is possible. Not saying that's not an option. We're going to talk about that at the very end today, but understand that. So step 1, stress. How do we reduce it? How do we look at our stressors? How do we reframe it? What can we do about it? So if you listen to any of our podcasts, number 1 is recognize that self-awareness. Where am I? So what are your top 3 stressors that keep you awake at night? Could you reframe those conversations with yourself? Could you dive deeper in there? Is it really as scary as we think? So that's step number 1. Could you avoid some of these things? Could you create more space in your life where you have control that pace? Could you get rid of some of the stuff in your calendar? Could you take a morning off? So the key is understanding, recognizing that right away, because if I don't recognize stress, I'm not going to have good total testosterone. And a big part of that is I just mentioned the reframing, but here comes the breath. Breathing through the nose, using my diaphragm, slowing it down. That's a really easy way to reset yourself every single day and all the wonderful benefits that go with it. But that's number 1. Number 2, sleep. Got to ask the question, where is testosterone made? It's made in the 3rd stage of sleep, hibernation sleep. This is when your hormones come out to play and build up. So if I'm not sleeping, I'm not getting enough REM sleep, I'm not getting enough hibernation sleep, I'm probably not going to be having high levels of total testosterone. So step back. Am I getting a good night's sleep? We have many podcasts talking about this, but sleep is a big deal. When do I go to bed? Circadian rhythms. What's my environment like? Consuming foods high in magnesium. What do I do with my electronics? All these wonderful things. You have to understand, how do I improve my sleep? Am I physically active? Number 3, now we're getting to the raw materials that makes testosterone. 95% of the American population is deficient in omega-3 essential fatty acids. That's why they're called essential. That's why we're such a huge fan of cod liver oil. Take 1 to 2 tablespoons of the cod liver oil a day. We believe we have the best in the world. Also, it's high in vitamin D3 naturally. So I have to take vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is now looked upon as another way to help preserve my total testosterone. Flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, the cod liver oil, these are all your omega-3 fats. Am I consuming these regularly? Number 4, which goes back to the food. Selenium and zinc are trace minerals that are actually builders for testosterone. So what foods, not supplements, what foods are high in selenium and zinc? And my go-tos every day ahead of my oatmeal this morning is pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, and Brazil nuts. Those are the big 3. So pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, Brazil nuts. They have these wonderful fats, omega-6 fats. They're also high in selenium and zinc. Broccoli, real deal oatmeal, amaranth, teff, millet, all these ancient grains are also high in selenium and zinc. Eggs, chicken, beef, and lamb. And one last thing you may have never heard of before is local honey. Local honey has boron in it, and boron's another preserver. Not saying you have to overdo honey, but maybe you add a little honey to one of your favorite organic type teas. So again, it's an easy thing. Maybe you have a sprouted piece of bread, put a little bit of local honey on that. That's high in boron, another good way to help preserve that from a nutrition standpoint. So omega-3 fats, foods high in selenium and zinc. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to move into the strength training. And I'm just going to mention briefly about this. Matt talked about this in the 89-day training program. This is in my book. I'm going to do a podcast specifically on this. But every month, I change my intensity. So I'm just going to share this very quickly. Matt talked about this in the 89-day training program. This month, the month of July, I've been doing 4 sets of 8 reps with the best form I possibly can. So I'm going to find a resistance that equals my 8 reps. If I can do 15 reps, the resistance is not demanding enough. If I can do 4 reps, the resistance is too demanding. So that's the goal. I want to put a demand on my body. The next month, the month of August, I'm going to do 5 sets of 5 reps with great form, but I'm going to increase the demand or the resistance on those reps. Now, if I can only get 2 reps, maybe that resistance is too great. If I can do, again, 10 reps is too little. So again, and then the third month, the month of September, I'm doing 3 sets of 13 reps. And this is a way for my body to constantly not overtrain. Recovery days are sprinkled in, but put demand on my muscles, my connective tissue, and the thriving hormones such as total testosterone. Number 6, again, this is another conversation, but look at your medications, especially statin medications to lower cholesterol. I'm not your doctor. I'm not telling you to get off them, but just understand, have this self-awareness that if I'm taking a statin medication, I'm probably compromising my total testosterone. Can you imagine going to see your primary care doctor and they put you on a statin med and say, hey, by the way, Chris, this is going to mess up your total testosterone, might cause erectile dysfunction, increased belly fat, mood swings, problem sleeping. I don't think everybody would be so interested in signing up for that plan. So again, creating this self-awareness. Now, as I wrap this up, I want to talk about the testing. So once a year, once every 18 months, get your total testosterone for both men and women. And again, ladies, put your hand out and say, hey, I want this test. That's your thriving or your vitality hormone. Now, there's some other tests. So if you feel like your total testosterone is not where you want it to be, you have a luteinizing hormone test. And what this does, again, it gives you a little bit more deeper picture. We also have a estradiol test, and it measures levels of estradiol in the form of estrogen that can influence by testosterone levels. DHEA, that's another test. That, again, precursor for your total testosterone that comes from cholesterol. And then the last one here is you have this thing called sex hormone binding globulin. That is a test that determines the amount of sex hormone binding globulin in your blood, which binds to testosterone and affects the amount of free testosterone. So your free testosterone, I really haven't talked much about that today. You can get that also. But that is any testosterone that is not bound to a protein, means it's unattached. And that number should be between 50 and 250. So again, if you want to go more into the weeds, but let's start with total testosterone today. For men, I like to see it ideally over 500. For women, over 30. But again, no matter where you are, now I have the baseline to look at my lifestyle. And again, it's that vitality test of see how I'm thriving, how I'm aging, the list goes on. So again, thanks for spending time with me today. If you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star, share it with others. That's our goal, to bring more and more content. Next session of the long form, I'll be talking about cholesterol and I'll go into the weeds. We'll talk about statins. We'll talk about numbers, what your risk is, the list goes on. But between now and then, go to our website, the bottom of the website, onto our living website, you'll see downloads. Click on the Know Your Numbers, take that, get your test sometime in the next year, and that starts giving you the baseline numbers, because we have to begin with this thing called self-awareness. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.